Biological life processes are the activities that an organism performs to survive, whether it is plant or animal, which are multicellular organisms. They include nutrition, excretion, respiration, growth, movement, response to external stimuli, and reproduction. I'll be focusing on reproduction in plants. Reproduction is essential to maintain the existence of plant and animal species. All these make the organism differ from that of non-living. So all living organisms reproduce to maintain their race so that life continues from generation to generation. Now children, the words like reappear, rename, recall, recycle, rejoin, rewrite and reproduce has the prefix re, which means again and again. Clear children? I hope you have understood the term very clearly. So, reproduction is the process in which organisms produce more of their own kind. Are you aware of that a living organism can give rise to new organism by two ways? First, asexual reproduction, in which offsprings or a new individual is produced without the fusion of gametes or sex cells. It is very common method of reproduction among lower organisms and plants. Second one is sexual reproduction, which involves formation and fusion of male and female gametes. And the offspring and the baby produced has a mixed feature of both parents. So it is the most common method of reproduction in higher plants. So firstly, I will explain you different types of asexual reproduction in lower plants of life such as bacteria, fungi and algae. Bacterial cells are prokaryotes, that is, no distinct nucleus or organelles are there. They are divided into two daughter cells which are identical. This process is known as binary fission. So the process starts with the division of nuclear material followed by the division of cytoplasm. Other than bacteria and euglena, you can clearly see the binary division in binary fission in the amoeba. Now another type of fission is multiple fission. Fission means splitting off, in which cell divides repeatedly to produce many daughter cells, as seen in unicellular algae such as chlorella and chlamydomonas. Right? Next is budding, which is commonly seen in the yeast, which is a fungus and hydra. In this process, a small bulb-like outgrowth called bud appears on the body of an organism and later detaches, means separate from the parent plant. Children, you can see these organisms with your naked eyes. No? These are so small that we use microscope to see these organisms and therefore they are called microorganisms. So let's see the life under microscope. Filamentous algae such as Spirogyra reproduce asexually by breaking up into two or more fragments, which grows into new parent plant. I have very interesting fact about this algae. These single cell organisms are responsible for more than 40% of Earth's photosynthetic production. Means photosynthesis takes place around 40% by these algae. And this filamentous algae is also known as pond silk. Moving to the last type of asexual reproduction in plant, and that is by spore formation, which we usually see on the bread loaf when we leave the bread for few days. During favorable conditions, spore develops into new individual on being liberated or released from the spore sac. Now children, I'll show you how asexual reproduction takes place in higher plants and whether it is produced naturally or artificially. The method of growing a new plant from a vegetative part such as root, stem or leaf without any reproductive organ is called vegetative propagation. Moving ahead, vegetative propagation by natural methods. So first is modification of underground stems. We can see tuber of potato, rhizome of ginger, corm of gladulus, also known as arvi, that we eat as a form of vegetable, and bulb of onion or garlic. Next modification is by aerial stem as shown in strawberry plant and mint. Next, by fleshy tuberous roots clearly shown in sweet potato and dahlia. Last and the most interesting is vegetative propagation by leaves like kalanchoe, where small buds arise from notches, from the edges, from the margins at their leaf. Okay, and when these leaves or buds fall on the moist soil, it gives rise to new plants, which we called as plantlets. Okay. Before I start with another type of vegetative propagation, quickly go through the advantages and disadvantages of vegetative propagation. Like faster method of growing plants, extremely useful for production of seedless plants. Okay. Now I'll explain you the vegetative propagation by artificial methods, which is fastest method of reproduction. Hence, it is used in gardens and nurseries. Since it has been adopted by humans for vegetative propagation, it is known as artificial propagation. Using plant cutting to reproduce plants from existing plants are mostly seen in case of rose, sugarcane and drumstick. Drumstick, that is segen. Next is layering. Formation of roots on coming in contact with ground, which further can be grown into independent plant. Usually layering is done in lemon and jasmine. Nowadays, you must be enjoying different varieties of mangoes, yummy mangoes like the Sherry, Chosa and Alfonso, which is the king of mangoes. Okay, so these are produced by practicing grafting method to obtain plant with superior qualities, right? So a stem cutting called scion and from one plant is merged or attached and tied to the rooted stem called stalk of another plant. And due to the rapid cell division, the bulb develops. So this is quite interesting, isn't it? Now the fourth method of artificial propagation is tissue culture. You all know that tissue is the group of cells together perform specific function, and here plants are grown by cells, tissues and organ of the plant on a suitable nutrient medium in an artificial environment. Here artificial environment means under laboratory conditions. That's all for asexual reproduction in lower and higher plants. So just go through the advantages of vegetative propagation once again. Now I'm going to explain sexual reproduction in flowering plants, that is angiosperms. Flowers are the organs of reproduction in seed-bearing plants called angiosperms. So what is flower, or what is the function of flower for the plant? It is morphologically compressed fertile shoot with modified leaves or floral leaves. It is adapted for the production of fruits and seeds. And yes, it is very important for the identification of unknown plants. So let's study about the structure of flower. A typical flower, that is a perfect flower or complete flower, has four basic parts: sepals, petals, stamens and carpels. In this picture, you can see that flower vary greatly in shape, size and color. So firstly, I'll be explaining about the outermost or the first whorl of flower, that is sepals. Collectively, we call it as calyx, and it is green leaf-like structures which protect the flower in its bud stage. Okay. Now, next whorl is, that is second whorl is corolla, which add the beauty to the flower. Do you all know why petals are brightly colored and scented? Yes, because it attracts the pollinators like butterflies and bee, which helps in pollination. Okay. So moving to the third whorl is androecium. It is the male reproductive part of flower. Now, how will you remember this? See children, another name is stamen, which has men in it, and men falls in the masculine gender, right? Now coming on to the last and the fourth whorl is gynoecium, which is the female reproductive part of the flower and is comprised of three parts: stigma, style and ovary. In this way, we have learned about the structure of flower. Now we will study about difference between complete and incomplete flower. So the flower having all four whorls, that is calyx, corolla, androecium and gynoecium, is called complete flower. While flower which lacks one or more whorls, that is any of the whorl is absent, then it is termed as incomplete flower. Complete flower is also known as perfect or typical flower. Now next is difference between bisexual and unisexual flower. Uni means one and bi means two or both. So here in unisexual flower, either it has male or female reproductive units as shown in papaya. While in bisexual flower, both male and female reproductive parts are on same flower like shown in dhatura or hibiscus. In this, you can see the image of staminate flower containing male reproductive organ and pistillate flower having female reproductive organ. Now, how reproduction in flowering plant take place? So, the steps involved in plant or flower reproduction are pollination followed by fertilization. We will learn about pollination first. The transfer of pollen from anther of a flower to the stigma of the flower is known as pollination. Pollination is of two types. Self-pollination, in which pollen grains are transferred from the anthers to the stigma of the same or another flower of same plant. But cross-pollination is transfer of pollen grains from anther of a flower to the stigma of a flower of another plant but of same type. Same type means that pollination will take place between the same variety of flower, like hibiscus flower with another hibiscus flower, rose with another rose flower. It is not possible that pollination will take place between a rose flower and a hibiscus flower. Right? Now, who is responsible? Let us see in the video. These are honey bee acting as pollinators. As plants cannot move from one place to another, they need help of other organisms or natural elements to transfer pollen grains. So let us study about agents of pollination. Anemophily, pollination by wind. Here the flowers of rice, maize are usually dry and light, so they can be easily carried away by the wind. Entomophily, pollination by insects. In this picture, you can see flowers have brightly colored petals so that they can attract pollinators. And these flowers are also produce nectar and smell, sweet smell, like in jasmine and rose. Hydrophily, pollination by water, usually occurs in aquatic plant, means plant which grows in water like Vallisneria and Hydrilla. Here the pollen grains are transferred to the stigma of a flower while moving with the water current. Last type of pollination is pollination by birds or animals. When they visit the flower, the pollen grains get stuck to the body, and while flying or moving to other plant, pollination takes place. Clear, children? Now moving to another type of pollination, and that is artificial pollination. Artificial pollination is produced by a new variety of plant with certain required characteristics. And in this process, the different varieties of plants, means selection of different varieties of plants are taken, and artificial pollination is done by cross breeding. Okay. and this process is known as hybridization, and the new variety formed is hybrid. So the steps involved in the artificial pollination is: first, the stamens of a bisexual flower are removed before their anthers mature. Then next, the flower with gynoecium intact is covered with a paper or muslin bag to prevent natural pollination. In next step, when the stigma of this flower matures, the pollen grains from anther selected plant are taken and deposited on the stigma. Then the seeds produced after artificial pollination give rise to a new hybrid variety, which is generally better than parent plants. Next, now the hybrid obtained are high yielding, of better quality, and are disease resistant. So these are the steps involved in the process of hybridization. Now children, we will see how fertilization takes place in flowering plant. When pollen reaches the stigma, it begins to grow a pollen tube, which travels down through style to reach an ovule inside the ovary. Now, on reaching a male gamete or reproductive cell present in pollen grain, it combines or fuses or unites with the female gamete or egg cell present in the ovule. So, how you will define fertilization? The process of fusion of male gamete with the female gamete is called fertilization. What happens to a flower after fertilization? Firstly, petals, sepals and stamens wither away, means dries and fall. Clear? Then ovary increases in size and then ripens to become fruit. And the ovules which are present inside the ovary develop into seed. Clear, children? Health is wealth. An apple a day keeps doctor away. What is an apple? Is it a fruit? We have studied from class nursery that apple is a fruit. But what is the truth? Let's see. Fruit is a ripened ovary. Pericarp consists of 3 parts. Thin outermost part, that is epicarp. Sweet fleshy part is the mesocarp, and innermost part that contains seed is endocarp. Functions of fruits is to protect immature seeds and stores food material. Fruits are of 2 types. True fruits, which arise as a result of fertilization, means when ovary ripens and becomes fruit, like mango and tomato. False fruits arise from floral parts other than ovary, means except ovary, like thalamus or receptacle, as in case of apple and pear. That is why they are called false fruits. Now, what is a seed? A seed is the first stage of growth in many plants. There are 2 types of seeds on the basis of cotyledons. Monocot seed, which has only 1 cotyledon, means 1 seed leaves. For example, maize, as it is clearly shown in the picture. Then dicot seed has 2 cotyledons, that is 2 seed leaves. as shown in peas. Have you ever tried growing seeds at home? No? Then better try. You will observe the changes during the period of germination. Now, when germination starts, radicle is the first part of seedling that emerges or comes out and develops into root system. Then plumule comes out, which grows into shoot system. So in science, you have studied the entire history of reproduction of plants. Now the conditions necessary for germination of seed are water, sunlight, oxygen, suitable temperature. Okay? Stay home, stay safe, stay blessed. I hope you would have understood each and every topic nicely. And seeing the colorful slides, I am sure that your face must be blooming and blushing too. Thank you, parents, for your support and cooperation. Keep smiling always. Have a nice day.